Airlines know things about your flight they will never voluntarily tell you. The aviation industry is built on carefully managed passenger experience. Every announcement, every policy, every piece of information shared in that cabin is filtered through operational efficiency and liability management. What that means practically is a massive gap between what airline staff know about your flight and what they are permitted or willing to tell you. That gap contains information that could save you money, protect your health, and fundamentally change decisions you make on every flight. 11 secrets, all verified by aviation insiders. Stay to the end. The final secret is the one the industry is most motivated to keep quiet. Secret number 1. Your pilot may be asleep in the cockpit right now. Controlled rest in the cockpit is official policy. Most passengers have absolutely no idea. Controlled rest, the formal aviation term for a pilot sleeping in the cockpit during flight, is a legally sanctioned practice under FAA regulations and most major aviation authority frameworks globally. It is not a safety violation. It is a deliberately designed fatigue management protocol acknowledging a fundamental reality of long-haul aviation. Pilot fatigue is one of the most significant safety risks in commercial flying, and managed rest is demonstrably safer than forcing a fatigued pilot to stay awake. On long-haul flights operated by a two-person crew, FAA regulations permit controlled rest periods of up to 40 minutes for one pilot while the other maintains active control. The resting pilot sets an alarm, reclines their seat, and sleeps. The other pilot monitors all systems. The aircraft, in virtually all cases, is on autopilot throughout. On ultra-long-haul flights with augmented crews of 3 or 4 pilots, dedicated rest bunks, located behind the cockpit or in separate crew rest compartments, allow off-duty pilots to take full sleep cycles while the active crew maintains the flight deck. What most people don't realize is that U.S. pilot fatigue regulations, updated in 2013 following the 2009 Colgan air crash directly linked to crew fatigue, mandate minimum rest periods between duty assignments, maximum flight time limits, and specific provisions for overnight flights crossing multiple time zones. Controlled rest is the mitigation strategy the industry relies on, and it works. But here's the twist. The next secret involves something physically happening to your body on every single flight that airlines have known about for decades and almost never disclose. Secret number 2. The cabin air is drier than the Sahara Desert. The air inside your flight is drier than any desert on Earth, and it's affecting your health. Relative humidity inside a commercial aircraft cabin during cruise flight typically ranges between 10% and 20%. The Sahara Desert averages approximately 25%. The mucous membranes in your nose, throat, and eyes, your body's primary physical barriers against airborne viruses and bacteria, begin losing protective moisture at humidity levels below 30%, with measurable immune degradation starting within 2 to 3 hours of exposure. Airlines know this. Aviation medical researchers have documented it extensively. The reason cabin humidity is kept so low is not passenger comfort. It is structural. Higher humidity accelerates corrosion of the aluminum airframe, increasing maintenance costs significantly. The economic decision of lower humidity consistently wins over passenger health on every flight operated by every major airline. The practical health consequences are real. Dehydration occurs 3 to 4 times faster than at ground level. Nasal and throat tissue dryness reduces the physical barrier protecting against upper respiratory infections, a key reason frequent flyers report catching colds after long flights despite feeling healthy at departure. What most people don't realize is that the correct strategy is not simply drinking water. Alcohol and caffeine are both diuretics that compound cabin dehydration. Electrolyte-containing beverages are significantly more effective at genuine rehydration than plain water alone. Nasal saline spray used at regular intervals measurably preserves mucosal immunity, a practice most experienced flight crew members follow privately. And this is where it gets crazy. The next secret involves something on your tray table that cabin crew are specifically advised not to discuss with passengers. Secret number 3. The dirtiest surface on your flight is not the lavatory. The most contaminated surface on any aircraft is what you're eating your meal off right now. Multiple independent microbiological studies, including research published by Travel Math and subsequent aviation hygiene analyses, consistently find the same result. The tray table is the most bacteria-contaminated surface on the aircraft, more contaminated than the lavatory flush button, the seatbelt buckle, or virtually any other cabin surface. The average bacteria count on airline tray table surfaces runs approximately 2,155 colony-forming units per square inch. The lavatory flush button, the surface passengers treat as the dirtiest on the plane, averages approximately 265 CFU per square inch. The tray table is more than 8 times more contaminated than what passengers are most careful to avoid. The reason is cleaning frequency. Aircraft lavatories are cleaned between every flight, a regulated requirement. Tray tables are wiped on a variable schedule that during tight aircraft turnarounds often means a single cloth spread across the surface, moving rather than eliminating bacterial contamination. Between long-haul flights, tray tables serve multiple meals to multiple passengers with no cleaning between them. What most people don't realize is that confirmed contamination includes fecal matter, documented in multiple published swab studies, alongside food residue, respiratory droplets, and skin contact bacteria from hundreds of previous passengers. Children's diapers are changed on tray tables. Shoes rest on tray tables. Antibacterial wipes applied before use cost almost nothing and eliminate the risk entirely. This completely changes how you approach eating on any flight. The next secret changes where you choose to sit. Secret number 4. The safest seat is not at the front of the aircraft. Aviation survival data points to one specific part of the plane. Airlines never advertise it. Commercial aviation is extraordinarily safe. The probability of dying in a commercial aircraft accident is approximately 1 in 11 million flights. But within survivable accidents, incidents where seat position meaningfully affects outcome, the data consistently identifies one area that passengers are almost never told about when choosing seats. A Time magazine analysis of FAA accident data covering 35 years found that passengers seated within 5 rows of an emergency exit had meaningfully higher survival rates in survivable accidents. More specifically, passengers in the rear third of the aircraft showed survival rates of approximately 69% in survivable incidents, compared to 49% for passengers in the front third. The physics is counterintuitive but sound. In the most common survivable accidents, runway excursions, controlled crash landings, fire events, the aircraft typically decelerates nose first. The front absorbs the highest impact forces. The tail section, farthest from typical front-of-aircraft fire origin points, statistically provides better survival outcomes. What most people don't realize is that airlines price premium seats at the front specifically because passengers perceive the front as superior. The safety data directly contradicts that perception in survivable accidents. The practical application is simple. Always identify the 2 nearest emergency exits upon boarding, count the rows between your seat and those exits, and note whether they are ahead or behind you. It costs nothing and takes 30 seconds. But it doesn't end here. The next secret involves something flight attendants do during takeoff and landing that almost no passenger understands correctly. Secret number 5. Flight attendants sit on their hands for a specific safety reason. The position flight attendants hold at takeoff has a purpose nobody explains to passengers. During takeoff and landing, the two most critical flight phases with the highest incident probability, flight attendants sit in jump seats with arms folded and hands tucked under their thighs. Most passengers assume this is a standard seated posture. It is a deliberate safety protocol with a specific functional purpose. The hands under thighs position keeps arms controlled and close to the body during the rapid deceleration forces a runway incident would generate. In an abrupt emergency stop, an unsecured arm becomes a projectile force. The same. Physics making unsecured objects dangerous in vehicle crashes. Tucking hands under thighs prevents reflexive bracing against surfaces that could break wrists or dislocate shoulders under high deceleration loads. Flight attendants during these phases are simultaneously conducting silent review, mentally rehearsing emergency procedures for the specific aircraft type, confirming emergency equipment locations, and preparing the exact commands they would give passengers during evacuation. The calm, seated appearance masks active mental preparedness. What most people don't realize is that the 30 seconds before landing, statistically the highest risk period in commercial aviation, is when flight attendants are most mentally active despite appearing most passive. The silence during final approach is deliberate operational preparation, not routine. The next secret involves something about airplane food that the industry has carefully avoided explaining honestly for decades. Secret number 6, your taste perception changes by up to 30% at altitude. Airplane food tastes bland for a scientific reason, and it has nothing to do with quality. Airline food has been a source of passenger complaints for decades. What almost nobody in the industry will tell you is that the taste problem is not primarily a food quality problem. It is a physiological problem affecting all food at altitude, regardless of preparation quality. Research published in the journal Food Quality and Preference documented that the combination of low cabin humidity, reduced cabin pressure equivalent to 6,000 to 8,000 feet altitude, and low-frequency background noise reduces sweet and salty taste perception by approximately 20 to 30%. Low humidity simultaneously dries nasal passages, and since flavor perception is approximately 80% smell and only 20% taste, dried nasal passages produce dramatic reduction in flavor, complexity, and intensity for any food. Lufthansa's internal research confirmed this and led the airline to significantly increase seasoning levels in their in-flight catering, compensating for the sensory suppression effect of the cabin environment rather than improving actual food quality. What most people don't realize is that the taste change specifically suppresses sweet and salty profiles while leaving umami, sour, and bitter perceptions largely intact. This is precisely why tomato juice, high in umami and acidity, tastes significantly better on aircraft than on the ground and accounts for a disproportionate share of in-flight beverage orders. And this is where it gets crazy. The next secret involves turbulence and what pilots actually know about it versus what passengers are allowed to believe. Secret number 7, turbulence cannot crash a modern commercial aircraft. Pilots know this with complete certainty, and airlines have decided not to tell you clearly. Turbulence is the #1 source of flight anxiety worldwide. Fear of turbulence drives significant passenger distress on every flight and is the primary driver of flight avoidance behavior, costing the travel industry billions annually. Airlines know the true facts about turbulence's actual structural danger, and communicating them clearly and consistently to passengers has never been a priority. Modern commercial aircraft, Boeing 737 and 787 families, Airbus A320 and A350 families, and all equivalent platforms are engineered and certified to withstand turbulence forces multiple times greater than any turbulence ever recorded in commercial aviation history. Wing certification requires withstanding loads 150% beyond the maximum anticipated operational load before structural failure. Boeing 787 wings flex upward by approximately 26 feet under extreme test loads without failing. Clear air turbulence, invisible and unpredicted, produces forces on the aircraft that are uncomfortable and disorienting, but entirely within the normal operational envelope. No commercial aircraft has ever been brought down by turbulence alone. The incidents that occur during turbulence involve unsecured passengers sustaining injuries from unrestrained movement, not structural threats to the aircraft. What most people don't realize is that pilots flying through turbulence are not concerned about the aircraft. They are managing passenger comfort and unsecured object risk. The calm PA voice during turbulence is not performed calm. It is genuine calm based on complete knowledge that the aircraft is in no structural danger. Secret number 8, the oxygen masks only provide 12 to 15 minutes of oxygen. The cabin oxygen masks are not designed to last the rest of the flight, and the reason is elegant. When an aircraft experiences rapid decompression at cruise altitude, the overhead oxygen masks drop and passengers are instructed to put them on immediately. Almost nobody knows those masks provide only 12 to 15 minutes of oxygen flow, and almost nobody knows why, which is the part that makes the system entirely rational. The masks are not designed to last the remainder of the flight because they don't need to. They are designed for one specific window, the time required for pilots to execute an emergency descent from cruise altitude of approximately 35,000 feet down to 10,000 feet, where the atmosphere contains sufficient oxygen for passengers to breathe normally without supplemental support. A modern commercial aircraft executing emergency descent from 35,000 feet to 10,000 feet takes approximately 8 to 12 minutes. The mask duration of 12 to 15 minutes covers that window with a safety margin. When the oxygen runs out, the aircraft is already at breathable altitude. What most people don't realize is that this is precisely why the safety briefing instructs securing your own mask before assisting others. At cruise altitude without oxygen, unconsciousness occurs in 15 to 20 seconds. An adult attempting to help someone else first will be unconscious before completing the task, leaving both without protection. But here's the twist. The next secret involves aircraft water, and most passengers consume it multiple times per flight without knowing what's in it. Secret number 9. The aircraft water tank is rarely as clean as you assume. The water making your in-flight tea and coffee is from a tank most passengers wouldn't knowingly drink from. Water used for hot beverages and lavatory hand washing on aircraft comes from an onboard tank filled on the ground before each flight. This tank and its connecting plumbing are cleaned on a maintenance schedule significantly less rigorous than passengers would assume for a drinking water system. An EPA study of aircraft drinking water across multiple U.S. carriers found approximately 12% of aircraft tested contained coliform bacteria, including E. coli, in the onboard water system. A follow-up investigation found that while major carriers improved tank cleaning compliance following the EPA report, the plumbing between tank and tap continued harboring bacterial contamination at rates unacceptable in ground-based food service environments. Flight attendants aware of this data, and many are, drink bottled water exclusively and use bottled water for personal hot beverages where possible. The fundamental challenge of maintaining aircraft water plumbing cleanliness across a commercial flight schedule has not been fully resolved industry-wide. What most people don't realize is that the specific risk is not the treated municipal water loaded into the tank. It is the tank itself and the plumbing. Biofilm accumulation in aircraft water lines is a documented and persistent problem that standard tank cleaning does not fully address. The practical guidance: drink bottled water and canned beverages on flights. Avoid hot beverages made from the onboard water system on long-haul flights. Use hand sanitizer rather than relying exclusively on lavatory hand washing. Secret number 10. Overbooking is a deliberate profit algorithm, not an accident. Every seat on your flight was sold to more than one person, and the math is completely intentional. Overbooking, selling more tickets than seats exist, is a universal commercial airline practice on virtually every flight. Most passengers understand this at a surface level. What they don't understand is the sophistication of the revenue optimization system determining exactly how many tickets above capacity are sold on each specific departure. Airlines use proprietary yield management algorithms analyzing historical no-show rates by route, day of week, season, fare class, and booking lead time to calculate the precise overbooking level, maximizing revenue while minimizing denied boarding probability. These algorithms update in real time as bookings progress and are among the most sophisticated revenue optimization systems in any industry. The financial penalty for an overbooked situation, compensating bumped passengers, is a calculated acceptable cost. Airlines build into revenue models as a deliberate line item. The overbooking is not an error. It is a profit decision made with full knowledge of the passenger impact. What most people don't realize is that gate compensation during an overbooked flight is a negotiation, and the opening offer is almost never the maximum available. Gate agents have authority to increase compensation significantly beyond the initial offer to secure volunteers before resorting to involuntary denial of boarding. The final available compensation is typically substantially higher than the first number mentioned. The final secret is coming, and it is the one the entire aviation industry is most motivated to keep vague and underspecified. Secret number 11. The real reason phones must be in airplane mode. The official explanation is partially true. The full story is something airlines won't say publicly. Here it is, the final secret, the one that aviation regulators, airlines, and manufacturers have collectively maintained as vague for decades, not because the truth is dangerous, but because full transparency would create a passenger relations problem the industry has never wanted to manage. The official explanation is that cellular signals from passenger devices could interfere with aircraft navigation and communication systems. This is partially true and significantly misleading simultaneously. The actual documented concern, acknowledged in internal FAA and EASA technical reports, is a phenomenon called frequency aggregation interference. Multiple devices simultaneously attempting to connect to cellular towers during flight generate a cumulative radio frequency noise floor in specific spectrum bands that can produce minor interference with certain older navigation aids, specifically VOR and ADF systems, under specific proximity and signal strength conditions. What most people don't realize is that airplane mode persists primarily due to regulatory inertia. The rule exists. Removing it requires formal regulatory action, and no airline or regulator has sufficient incentive to invest in formally revising it. The secondary reason is passenger behavior management. Blanket rules around devices during boarding and briefings are operationally easier than nuanced policies. And this is where it gets crazy. Airlines enforcing airplane mode on cellular simultaneously sell Wi-Fi connectivity as a premium in-flight service. Passengers are prohibited from using their cellular connection while being sold an airline-controlled wireless connection throughout the same flight. The distinction is not purely technical. An airline generates zero revenue from your cellular connection. It generates direct revenue from its own Wi-Fi product. The rule that remains is the one that doesn't compete with the airline's commercial interest. That is the secret the industry is most motivated never to state plainly. If any of these changed how you think about flying, hit like and share it with every frequent traveler you know. Subscribe because the next video covers 10 hotel secrets the hospitality industry actively keeps from guests. Pricing, upgrades, room assignments, and amenities that change how you book and stay permanently. Coming very soon.